Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Kenyon Salo, who energizes and inspires us to take more risks, to get outside of our comfort zones, and to create more experiences that impact others, living your bucket list life. He's a professional athlete, an adventurer, a skydiver with over 6,000 jumps, who's been flying via parachute into Sports Authority Field at 60 plus miles per hour, ending with a soft tiptoe landing on the 10-yard line for every Denver Broncos home game for the past 9 years as one of the 5 members of the Denver Broncos Thunderstorm Skydive team. In his talks, he has a rare ability to capture and engage everyone in the room via his energy, his storytelling, and even by creating content that delivers to each of the 4 color personality types by speaking to the core motives and natural talents that everyone experiences as human beings. So please join me now with the simply awesome Kenyon Salo. Well, hello, Kenyon Salo. Thank you for joining me on Virtually Speaking. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm pretty phenomenal. Life is good. Everything is rolling as it should. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Absolutely, my friend. It's been a while since we've talked. I know it's been a crazy year for everyone, and I'm excited that we are in a new year. I know you are one of these speakers who I love because you're so uplifting and inspirational, and you always have a very positive outlook about everything, and you have a lot of energy and really a very unique presentation that, in fact, I think I was on the phone the other day and somebody said, there's this speaker who we liked, and he got up on a ladder. Do you know who that might be? And I said, yeah, I think I know exactly who that is. Kenyon Salo goes up to the top of a ladder, and he said, yeah, somebody had seen him also and was petrified that he was going to fall.
Well, you know, it's kind of part of the act, as they say. And sure, it's pretty phenomenal to have that in the presentation. As I connect with so many of the audience members, that particular section is always memorable. I mean, it's one of those things that people see. Of course, they're scared for me. They're scared for themselves. They're scared for audience members. But no, ultimately what it comes down to is it's a very, very safe presentation. Just like if they were to bring in a fire act, or they were to bring in a death-defying act, you know, it's never death-defying in reality. In reality, it's very safe. And it's pretty fun to be able to do that. And audiences have gotten great results from it because they see it, they feel it in their hands, they're nervous, and then they understand when I unpack what it's all about. They go, oh, I get it. And then that way the learning is so easy for the audience members. It's like immediately it hits home and they're like, yes, that makes sense to me. And so it's a very easy way to deliver the concept so that the audience has a powerful takeaway, an aha moment.
And what is that aha moment? What are you talking about when you're at the very top of this, I think, like 8-foot ladder?
Well, it depends on the size of the ceiling I can do. I mean, I've done 3, I've done 6. There was one event that I did where I was actually able to use a 16-foot ladder. And then, of course, I was on there. And then with the rest of the stage, it seemed like I was, 20-something feet in the air. Now, for me, a lot of times I can't see the audience. So it's just me there on the ladder. And I do stand on that top step. And really what happens is, there's that moment in which the audience doesn't think I'll actually do it. I'm just going up the ladder. But the ladder represents what we all go through in terms of making our dreams a reality. You see, when you stand in front of the ladder, that's your dream. But your dream is just a thought. And then you have to move to that next step, which is kind of like taking the first step on a ladder. And that is actually basically making sure you have goals. You got to have your goals. And then the goals are like that timeline. And then from there, you have to plan. And then from there is action. And that's that middle part. We can all climb the center of a ladder. We're good at it. And then the last part is that big part. It's that step to reality. And that's the scariest part for a lot of people because there's signs out there. Don't do this. Don't stand on this step or above this step. Could cause serious injury or death. Well, okay. The ladder, again, is a metaphor. I'm not asking audience members to do it. I'm not asking anybody else to do it. I'm just showing that that's the actual step. And then when you get up there, The very first time that I actually did that presentation, where I saw this ladder in a hallway and I grabbed it, I made it up as I was going.
Nice.
And I got to the top step and a woman yelled out, "Please get down from there. You're making us all feel very uncomfortable." And so I was like, whoa, I don't want to make my audience feel uncomfortable here. And what happened was I actually sat down on top of the ladder and I said, wait a minute here. Let's break this down. The audience, which was uncomfortable, I said, how many of you are uncomfortable? Lots of people raised their hand. The audience, which is uncomfortable, is my environment. And I always say that your environment is stronger than your willpower, meaning that you might want to do something in life, but you can't because your environment is saying, don't do that. Like, for example, don't start that new business. You'll lose a lot of money. Don't go into that relationship. You'll break your heart. Or don't go skydiving. You'll probably
die.
No, not die. No. No, I mean, so many people think that that's the case, and that's what the audience yells out. But, you know, it is the environment saying you can't do these things, but ultimately we can do these things in life, but it just comes down to the fact that we have to take that step. So
yeah.
there's a metaphor.
Yeah, and you know, that brings up two things I definitely have to bring up. One is you jump out of airplanes. You skydive.
I do. It's in my wheelhouse to stand on a ladder. I do skydive for a living, 7,000 plus skydives.
Right. And that's pretty exciting because, you know, for the sports fan out there, for people who love to go to outdoor events, we've all seen these guys jump out of planes and land on the parade or land on the 50-yard line before the game starts. But I didn't realize that the Denver Broncos actually have a team of skydivers, just a few guys. You're one of them.
Yes.
Who jumps out of the plane in good weather, which is most of the time, and lands on the field before every single home game. I mean, that's a big investment in everybody's time and energy. And, you know, I know it's not completely easy to do. So you must be obviously practicing a lot, and but it must be really fun because I hope you're a Broncos fan, because otherwise it must not be.
Of course. Huge Broncos fan. Look, I've been doing this for 10 years into the stadium. I've been skydiving for over 2 decades. And 7,000 skydives and hundreds and hundreds of jumps into the stadium itself. I've never actually come through the gates. I always have come from above and landed on the field, and then we stay for the games, which is amazing. And we do it for the fans. And yeah, safety is paramount for sure, that we have not had any incidences of any kind. We've always landed within the parameters of the field. And we're the only team that does it the way we do it, where the military does it and they come in kind of slow and they just kind of land there and they're on big parachutes. But we fly high performance parachutes. It's like parallel parking a car at 50 miles an hour. And we fly down the stands and make the turn and go down the field. And then we're stopping right around between the 20-yard line and the end zone. And there's nothing after that. I mean, there's a wall there. So you got to make sure you don't go into the wall. And it is one of the favorite parts of most games for people, especially people that bring their kids or their families, and they've seen it and they're like, oh my gosh, wait until you see the skydivers. And we love doing it for the fans. It's a big thing. We enjoy it.
So it's the Denver Broncos Thunderstorm Skydive team is the name.
That's correct.
You want to see some footage online.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I'm sure that when they put in those new cameras that are on the wires, that didn't sit well with you guys at first. You're like, oh great, now you've got us jumping through all these wires in the air.
Well, you know, they brought in the cable cam cables, and no one had done that before at all. And they said, can you do it? And so we looked at configurations, because the cables are there. They can't take down the wires prior and let us jump and put them back up. So what they had to do is they pulled the camera into the corner of the field, down on the field, and that allowed this little triangle on the northwest corner for us to dive through. So you can't just fly through it. You actually have to dive through the cables, and then you come out underneath them. And we know where they are, but we can't actually see them. So we just have to know where our spot is and fly that spot and just know the wires are around us. And sometimes I'll catch a glimpse at the last second. I'll be like, ooh, there goes a cable. But it is amazing. And again, the only team that does that, because of the abilities that the team has as a whole to be able to pull that off. And that's if the weather's perfect. If there's some winds or there's some swirling in the stadium or whatever other things are happening, yeah, that's a challenge too.
Yeah. And so you are pretty much an adventuresome guy, adventurous man. You also jump off cliffs, I think, and base jump, I think it's called, but not buildings, or also buildings. Do you jump off anything?
Sure. I mean, so base jumping's part of it. Buildings, antennas, span, which is bridges, and earth, like cliffs, and base jumping is part of the scenario. And so I have been brought in to do professional events and jump from buildings and things like that. I don't do illegal jumps. I don't have time for illegal jumps. I keep it all within the correct realm, and it's pretty fun. And that's part of it. And that's part of the sports I do: adventure, skydiving, scuba diving, base jumping, and just paragliding is something I picked up last summer during the pandemic. And I said, oh, I'm going to learn how to paragliding outside, hiking, enjoying the mountains, and getting to fly. Just any particular way that I can enjoy the view of the world and do things that most won't, so that I can have what most can't.
Yeah, and that brings me to the bucket list life thematic, title of, what you're all about, and really a title of your keynote. So that's something a lot of people really like. When I say that, they go, ooh, I like that. And it kind of brings people out of their comfort zone. It kind of brings people out of their reality, and they start thinking about, like what you said before with the ladder, like goals and thoughts about what else have I not done that I was scared to do, or that I wanted to do and I never got around to, or that I still think I'd like to do. So this is something I think you kind of live in this thought process. You live in this, like, why not? Let's do it. Let's live. Let's get out there. Let's not be afraid. And that's why people like you, because you really bring a crowd out of their comfort zone. And I've heard so many planners say, this guy had more of a reaction from our audience than anybody's had in years, or anybody's ever had. People were not looking at their phones. People were not leaving early. People were not going to the bathroom. It was like, a pin drop focus on what this guy's saying, nonstop excitement, and lots of engagement. So you're able to really connect with people on all of these thoughts and these ideas, and kind of exciting them about life. I hope that transfers into their lives, and you hear about it well afterwards, that you changed some lives and that you affected people to actually take these risks, because that's kind of what you're all about.
Well, the concept of the bucket list life is very paramount to the fact of where people are at.
Right.
And the things that I train from stage are 3 very simple concepts: create more experiences, share more stories, and live more fulfilled by helping others first. So what happens is, we all have that dream, or we have the idea of what we want to do, especially during the pandemic, things like that. Like, what are we going to do when this thing is over? Like, if someone said right now, it's completely over, but you have to go do that thing that you were really nervous about doing and didn't want to say yes to. Because I say yes and let the how figure itself out later. I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. But a lot of us want to say no. A lot of us just want to say, oh, it's easier to be like, nah, not me, not right now. I don't have the time, the money, I have responsibilities, or they have generally fear. But ultimately what it comes down to is, when you say yes and let the how figure itself out later, everything works out. And that's what I speak about from stage, because these 3 areas are key to personal lives and their professional lives. And so we can create more experiences first, because that is kind of like the bucket list items. Like, how do we create more experiences?
Yeah.
But an experience doesn't have to be jumping out of a plane. It could be like, I want to travel to Italy and see the Mona Lisa. I want to watch my son get married one day, or I want to walk my daughter down the aisle, or I want to enjoy a nice glass of wine on the French Riviera. Whatever it is for you, that's something that can be super exciting, and you can put that on your bucket list. And it's about saying yes. Like, I'm going to say yes and make it happen. The thing is people will say yes, but then they won't do it. And then when I challenge them with a timeline, like, go ahead and do that thing within the next 12 months, they're like, oh, I don't know, Kenyon, if I can do it in 12 months. I don't know. Well, you know what? There are people that only have 12 days to live that would kill for 12 months. And we think we're all going to end up on the rocking chair at the end of our lives on the porch, and it's going to be great. And yes, I want that for everybody. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And some of us don't have a tomorrow. And that's what puts us all on a level playing field, is that it doesn't matter whether I jump out of airplanes or you drive super, super safe to work. We're all on the same playing field. None of us knows if we have a tomorrow, and we just have to take advantage of today. So that's the first section, which is creating experiences. Wow. And that's where I think it's really powerful, And yeah, it's a little on the edge of the seat for the audience because they're like, not just scared because they're seeing something, they're actually a little nervous because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to say yes to this thing that I've always wanted to do, but I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah. And then the second section is what? Share
more stories. So that naturally rolls into it. Like if you think about the last thing that you did that you really enjoyed, most of the time the stories people are sharing are the ones that they're like, I didn't imagine I would ever do that thing. So then what happens is people say, well, I want to share a story. Or they share stories and knowledge and information. And that's in the workplace too. Because if you have a new employee come into the workplace and you have a long-time veteran employee, who's going to be training who? They help each other, and let's pass the stories back and forth. And so that share more stories is about creating that connection, that bond. It's really about friends and family. You see, experience is about self. What do I want to do? What do I want to see? How do I want to experience the world?
Right.
But sharing more stories is about friends and family. Sharing more stories is the glue that bonds us together. And so that's how we get to know people. And whether you talk to someone that's sitting next to you on an airplane and you start to have that conversation, could become your best friend, could become your business partner. You never know.
Right. And then the third section is
helping others. It's living more fulfilled by helping others first. And that's why I believe we're on the planet. When we help others first, without the expectation of return, everything comes back tenfold every time.
Yeah.
And I live those three things in authenticity, from the stage and off the stage, which that authenticity is what the audience gets, because I'm not speaking about something that I don't know about and live 365 days a year.
Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, I remember there's a really cool moment where in your video that kind of Batman gets up to the outside of a hospital window and taps on the window with a kid. Tell me that story. That was you, right?
I was not in the bat suit. That was actually the Aurora SWAT team, which had been hired to wear these costumes. But it's not about that. The story itself is about Hallie, who had just overcome cancer. And I said, Hallie, what's on your bucket list? And she said, I want to see superheroes on the outside of the children's hospital. And I was like, yes. But I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know anybody at the children's hospital. But over the course of 60 emails, 60 days later, 60 people showed up on top of the helipad of the children's hospital, all combined to help the team effort of bringing superheroes down the side of the hospital for these kids. And some of these kids never left the hospital, and their families still share about it. And some of these kids did leave, and they tell their friends and family, I saw a superhero outside my window. And unfortunately, Hallie passed away 2 years later after this. But her sister continues to share this message on social media. And I continue to share the video with every event that I go to impact lives. And that's the journey, because that in itself, the living more fulfilled by helping others, is about community. It is about how we impact the world. It is about how we're going to make a difference and the legacy that we live. And that starts with what we're going to do within our local community, what we're going to do on the work level and that professional environment, and then what we can all do together to make that difference. And so that's how the keynote itself flows from this adventure edge of the seat to these aha moments, to these deep feelings that they have. And then I bring them out and I lead them on a super high note where we all get together as a group and they're just laughing, and we end it on a super high note, and everybody walks out of the room going, okay, I'm going to say yes to life. This is it. This is what I needed. I'm ready.
Yeah. And you, and I know you're very successful at that, again, because the reviews are just absolutely awesome for you every time you speak. And you know, one thing I thought was really interesting when I first met you was that you'd done so much research on people, and you have a really good knowledge of, you know, how to present to people. One of the things I was hoping to have you explain a little bit today was also this analysis of what types of people are in the audience and how you deliver a little bit of something to each type of personality in the audience, so they all get something, and it's not just something that only the type A personalities are going to like or other personalities are going to like. So tell us a little bit about that process and what you do.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite parts of it because it's breaking down the success. And it's like, well, why is Apple successful? Why is Disney successful?
Right.
Like, you break it all down. There's so many different reasons.
Right.
For me, I knew I was coming to the table strong as a communication. I could deliver, I can speak. I knew that that was there. But then I had to take a look at the industry. And this is in 2015. So I was taking a look at the industry and I said, hey, I'm going to make my move into being a keynote trainer facilitator.
Right.
And I said, what's the industry doing well? What are they missing? And where can I fill a void? And that be that aha surprise to the industry where they're like, whoa, we haven't seen this before. This is exciting. Sure. Standing on top of a ladder is part of that.
Part of it.
But I broke it down very simply from all the things I've studied in my life is first, and there's so many different personality type systems out there. I just picked the one that worked for me. And it was very simple, which was the color code, which is reds, yellows, blues, and whites. But very simply is there's leaders, there's family people, there's fun people, and there's data people. Now, we're not all predominantly one. We are predominantly one, but we're not only one.
Right.
And so we have a little bit of other things, but we have that kind of like what we prefer. So I said to myself, what would be the best scenario? And be like, okay, let's create a keynote that hits all four of those.
Yeah.
Now, first and foremost, I had to choose two that I was going to give a little more focus on. And those two areas were family, or the blues, and fun, the yellows, because that's authentic to me. I love family. I love friends. I love having fun. And if I come from a place of being authentic, then I will always deliver super, super well. So then there is some stuff for the reds, for the leadership, and there is some data in there for the whites. Fortunately, the data is always the smallest amount in any audience. So it usually works out quite well in that regard. And most of the time, the blues and yellows are the top of the audiences. Now, there's certain events that I am not applicable for, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But for the general all company events or the HR department or those scenarios where they're bringing people together and the conference is all about connecting and networking and that like, hey, this is our once a year celebration. I'm either opener or closer, and it's brilliant.
Right.
So I focused on those areas. And then the other thing was I wanted to make sure that there were aspects of there was visual content. There was auditory content. There was like this feeling kinesthetic content. And that is sprinkled throughout. So I believe that each part of the phase, there's the opening, the three concepts, and the closing. There's connection points all along the way for the audience members. And they walk out of there going, I feel like he got me. I feel like I really enjoyed that. And that's really, I want to leave the audience with that feeling. Like, yeah, they're happy they attended.
Have you always been a happy connector and somebody who's been just very kind of vibrant about life and always said yes to everything? Has this always been your mantra?
Well, we teach what we need to learn most. And so while I say yes all the time, there's times I was like, no, I don't want to do that thing. Sometimes my girlfriend would be like, let's go for a hike. I'd be like, no, look how cold it is outside, or this or that, or the clouds or what. And then she gets me out the door. Next thing you know, I'm up the mountain and I'm standing there going, wow, this is beautiful. And I get home and I never get home and say, I wish I didn't.
Right.
But there are times where I've been home and I'm like, I wonder if I did. Right. So the answer is, predominantly, I do say yes. I am happy all the time. If I'm not happy, I'm level. So I don't like to be below level. I'm just level. Like, hey, you're really quiet today. Well, I'm just kind of level. But I prefer being excited about life and excited about things and people and just what's happening. It seems to be easier that way.
And it makes sense that a guy like you likes to get out there and expound a lot of energy and really just do things that take a lot of energy and cause and create exhilaration. When was the first time you decided you were going to do something kind of crazy, like jumping out of and I know you think it's not crazy. Most people think it's a little crazy to jump out of an airplane, but when was the first time you decided to jump off a cliff? Were you hooked? Are you an adrenaline junkie? Is that what they call people like?
Well, look, in my teens and 20s, you could have called it an adrenaline junkie, but I go back to a kid when I got my first BMX and it was, piece of plywood and a bunch of 2x4s. And then like, hey, can I jump over this trash can at 6 years old? Sure, it was at a young age that I was always like looking at things, but I was also curious how things worked. And throughout my life, yeah, it was professional snowboarding and then skydiving. And then, okay, I was jumping off of small cliffs into the river without a parachute, you know, at the local swimming hole as a kid, to eventually being like, hey, whoa, you could put a parachute on and jump off a 400-foot cliff? I'm in, count me in.
Wow.
But everything is calculated. Every risk is calculated. Sure. So I'm doing everything I can to put the safety margin in my favor. And I have said no when the safety margin is not in my favor. So that's the time I say no. I say no, this is not worth the risk. I look at everything. I said, this is not worth it. And the safety margin is not in my favor. I'll say no. I'll come back another day.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think some people, I mean, like, there's got to be a mindset difference, though. And I know you try and spread this to people who don't have this mindset or don't look at things that way. But what is it about your peers in this industry and the people you jump out of the planes with? What's different about people like that who are just willing to, I mean, are they just having a better life? Are they living more completely than the rest of us? Are they having more fun? Are they less serious? What's the difference? What's the differentiating factor between these kinds of people and the rest of us?
Well, ultimately, we all only have one life. We know that. And the deal is that we all get to choose what our experience is in this life. Whatever that experience is, I will celebrate that person for what they've chosen. If someone says, I want to have 6 kids and family is my number one thing,
right.
Amazing. Go for it. Awesome. That's something I celebrate. Someone wants to work 80 hours a week and they're going to impact and change the world through their entrepreneurship. Great. Amazing. I celebrate that. What's hard for me is when I see people or individuals who say, I wish I could. I want to. One day, maybe that will happen. I'm too old for that. Like, I went scuba diving with my 72-year-old mom. She got me into scuba diving.
Wow.
So it wasn't like I was like, Mom, you should try it. She was like, I want to go diving with you. So she got me into scuba diving at the age of 70 at the time. And now she's 72 and she's still diving. And we've been with the family. You know, it is that wishing you had scenario that frustrates me because look, the very first time I jumped out of a plane, the door opened up of this little Cessna and another jumper jumped out. I was holding on to the framework of the seat, the pilot's seat. I was holding on like, well, what if I fall out of the plane? Which is kind of the point. But it shows that my very first skydive, I was like anybody else. I was like, whoa, this is some serious stuff here. Mm-hmm. But then I went to what I had been taught.
Right.
Put one hand out, put one foot out, put the other hand out, put the other foot out. Do the count, up, down, arch, exit. Next thing you know, I'm skydiving.
Right.
So I had been given the tools to be able to do my first skydive, not jump into a stadium. I had been given the tools to do one skydive successfully with 2 jump masters holding onto me like training wheels.
Right.
I was like, and there was this 60-year-old woman smiling at me through her helmet. I was like, well, if she can do it, I definitely can figure this out. So it really comes down to people, yeah, you have to push yourself. Just say yes. And then what happens is you're like, ooh, I did that. Well, what if I could do this?
Right.
And that's how people step up the ladder.
Absolutely. It seems like there's a message that I've heard that comes from you and people like you and successful people where there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of fear, but breaking through that can be the scariest thing you ever do. But when you get through it and you get past it, it's often something that transforms your life forever. And you say, you know, I'm really glad I got through that and I didn't succumb to the fear and I didn't succumb to the pressure that I was putting myself under to, succeed. And I have to be the best at this. It's just like, try it, do it, and enjoy life a little bit. So that's who you are. You're the enjoy life guy. Say yes, enjoy yourself and take some risks and spread the love. It'll come back to you, which I love that piece as well. So a guy like you, in a pandemic. Coming out of it, we're heading into a new world. It's going to be changed a little bit forever because of this. But what's your outlook for all of this? I mean, I'm sure you're kind of the guy who a lot of your friends look to for, being the light in their lives and being the optimistic one in their lives. And I'm sure you see a lot of people who have succumbed to the depression and the fear of this pandemic. So what does a guy like you say to your friends, and what does a guy like you say to yourself about where we are right now and where we're headed?
Well, ultimately, I think it comes down to the fact that we are all taking this one day at a time. I mean, if we all think about the fact that sometimes way back when, before COVID, let's say you got sick and you were down and out for 5 or 6 days. Well, those 5 or 6 days seemed like the longest thing on the planet. And then all of a sudden you were like better again. And you kind of came out of it. And then you're like, I feel 100%. You're doing all the things that you would normally do. And then now if you look back at it, you're like, well, it seems like a blip on the radar. I do believe that's the same for this scenario. I look at it as a scenario as what is the opportunity right now with what we're giving. First and foremost, we must be safe. We must be safe for ourselves, for our friends, for our family. Right. We must protect those around us. And when we do and we focus on that, I think ultimately then we say, okay, well, what can we do with what we're given? And yes, this is much longer than any of us thought. We're like, oh, it's a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. Okay, through the summer. Now now we're coming up on a year. And I said, what are the possibilities and opportunities for me? First was making sure that I can still deliver the message that I have to as many people as possible and impact as many lives as possible. And well, the game has changed and that's going to be virtual. Awesome. So made sure that the virtual delivery of my product and service is top notch so that the clients and the attendees get the best experience they can through this virtual world. Yeah. And I will do that as long as needed until one day when someone says, hey, we have a stage for you to be on and it's a live event. Excellent. And then we will do this hybrid version for everybody. And then eventually it'll be business as usual. And we'll all look back and go, yeah, remember the pandemic? Yeah, that was a thing. But in the grand scheme of things, it's going to seem like a drop in the bucket. Yeah, we all experienced it. It's a shared experience. The whole world has experienced it. So from an experience standpoint, it's a shared experience. Second, we have stories. Everybody's got pandemic stories. Yeah. How it's affected them in some way. And third, we all know the good that the planet has done by helping others through this pandemic. Well, isn't that the bucket list life? That's exactly what I teach. Create more experiences, share more stories, live more fulfilled by helping others. It's happening in real time.
Absolutely. So what do you say to somebody who, you've got to have come across a couple people recently, I'm sure, who are just down and out. You tell them to take it day by day. You tell them to, look at the, what can you do? What else do you say to somebody who's going through it right now? And you could tell needs your words of wisdom and your support.
Well, it comes back to the bucket list life. So anybody that's down and out, they're stuck, they're in a rut, I don't know what to do. They can do one of those three things. Now, creating experience seems like one, but for a lot of people, that's really challenging to be able to go live when they don't feel like they're alive in the moment. Right. So the stories is happening, but they're always sharing their stories of why it's challenging for them. So most individuals in that scenario, and it includes me, when I've been down, I find that the natural thing for us to do is we want to help others. Because it says that the minute you go out to help another human being, you actually stop thinking about yourself. Yeah. And as you help others, you start looking outward, and then it fills you up, and then you start to feel alive. You start to feel excited about life. You're seeing joy in others, and that brings joy to you. And it's this continuum effect. And then all of a sudden you're like, and someone's like, hey, you want to go skydiving? And you're like, actually I do. And then there it goes. So I generally say, instead of focusing on you, focus on others and see what that brings for you.
Amazing. I love it. Your presentations are so filled with energy and excitement that they go by really quickly. And I've heard people say that too. And now I'm like, wow, we just started and it's already been the amount of time I normally spend with people. You just have a lot of energy and a lot of love and a lot of passion for the world and for others. And that's the beautiful thing about you, man. So I've always enjoyed every time we get on the phone. It's exciting. It's fun. Every time I have somebody who's excited about you as a speaker, I know it's going to be a home run. I get really excited about that as well. So it's been great knowing you and getting to know you and really being able to show people a guy like you, because there's not many guys like you. There's a lot of inspirational speakers, a lot of people who uplift audiences, but you do it differently. There's just something different about you. And it's probably because you're out there doing real stuff. You know, you're not just on the ladder. You're out there, you know, living life and jumping out of planes, and you're living this exhilarated existence. So it's fun to have people tap into that and get that rubbing off on them a little bit, you know, when we can do that for them. So that's awesome. Is there anything that you can leave us with that I know you've kind of said some amazing things, but is there anything that is on your mind that you would want to leave us with as kind of a parting thought?
Well, ultimately, I want every individual to take that thing that they've wanted to do. So that bucket list item, whether it's travel or a single day experience or something that they said, well, now I'm ready to start. Maybe it's even writing a book, whatever it is for somebody. I want you to say yes. Let
Amen.
the how figure itself out later, and then start that next step of setting goals. That goals, it'll take it out of, I want people to take it out of the dream format and put it into a goal format. Mm-hmm. From there, then things will start to happen and to unfold, and then have that success. And there's no need to wait. You can learn and do and experience the world starting today.
And it's what's that old saying? When you follow your passion, doors will open that you didn't even know were there before.
That's right. That's right. They just start opening. You meet people and they're like, hey, I do that too. And you're like, no way.
Right.
So
awesome, man. Well, you are just a breath of fresh air, and it's always so fun talking to you, like I said. So thanks so much, Kenyon. This has been absolutely awesome. And I look forward to working with you very soon on the next event. Yes. And in the meantime, have yourself a wonderful February and a beginning of 2021. Let's make it great.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Absolutely, man. I'll talk to you soon.